This is a Porsche Taycan, and it's quite a good-looking car, if I may say. It originally came out in 2020 with the Mac Daddy trim, the Turbo S, and since then, Porsche has released its regular slew of trims for you to choose from. So you'll have things like the regular turbo, the GTS, the 4S, and this, which is the base trim. Now, I've done some research, and based on that, I've drawn a conclusion that if you're in the market for a Porsche Taycan, the one to buy is the base trim. So in today's video, I'll explain why it is that I feel that way by pointing out some not so hard truths.
Let me start with the headline figures. Buried deep in its loins is a 240 kilowatt battery that produces 321 horsepower and 254 pound-feet of torque. In overboost mode with launch control, it can push out 402 horsepower, making it the most powerful base model Porsche humankind has ever seen. The base model is the only trim that is currently rear-wheel drive only, and that means that 0 to 60 is done with in just 5.1 seconds, making it the fastest four-door Porsche in the lineup. It does also share the same 2-speed transmission as the rest of the Taycans.
All of that comes to you at a base price of $90,900, and that might sound like a lot of money, but then again, if you're looking to buy a brand new Porsche, should you really be looking for a bargain? Probably not. But it doesn't really answer my question of why go for the base trim. Well, to start answering that, I want to switch gears and talk about this, which is the Turbo S. Now you'll notice it doesn't actually look all that different from the base car, but we'll get into that in just a second. This car has a much more powerful electric engine, 750 brake horsepower. 0 to 60 is done with in just 2.6 seconds, and it comes standard with much cooler wheels. But it isn't all better.
The base has all the same color options and all the same wheel options. It also is 500 pounds lighter, has better ground clearance, and 1.4 cubic feet of additional storage at 14.3 cubic feet total. It does have 14 less miles of range on a full charge, but takes a full hour less to charge from 0% to 100%. Let's not forget to mention that the Turbo S starts at $194,900. Over $100,000 more than the base.
The base trim shares the battery architecture with the 4S. And I didn't mention it earlier, but there's actually two battery options for this car. You can get the standard one, which I've outlined in the video earlier, or you can get what's called the Performance Battery Plus. That will increase the power output to 469 brake horsepower and 263 torques, but weirdly, it doesn't improve the 0 to 60 time, nor does it impact the 143 mile an hour top speed. Me personally, I probably wouldn't bother with it, but that's ultimately up to you. I'm sure it has some benefits. This is, after all, Porsche, and they don't do anything for no reason at all. But that's not the only thing. You see, this shares a lot of things with some of its higher trimmed, more expensive brethren. It has the same body, and that means that it has the same drag coefficient of 0.24, making it the most aerodynamically efficient Porsche on sale to date. It also has the lowest center of gravity of any production Porsche, and this rear wing is variable. It articulates at different angles based on your 3-speed intervals, 56, 99, and 124 miles per hour.
Yes, the Turbo S does have some nicer materials. Carbon fiber on the exterior in place of plastic, Racetech 18-way seats as standard, and some obvious performance upgrades. But does all of that really matter?
To me, it kind of doesn't, and that has to do with why, me personally, I would buy a Taycan. I don't look at this as being a weekend car. I look at it more as being an interesting, very good-looking Porsche daily driver. And for that reason, it's gonna get beat up, it's gonna get used, it's gonna get driven, it's gonna get mileage. So I don't want very expensive carbon fiber front lips or Racetech interior that I have to worry about if my hands are too oily and I dirty it beyond repair. I want something that I can drive every single day and keep the anxiety level to a minimum. Also, it's not like sitting in this car feels like a medieval prison. If I didn't do the research myself about the differences between this and the Turbo S, I wouldn't have had anything to complain about or anything to see as being an issue. The interior in here is very lovely. Everything is covered in very premium leather, nothing that you wouldn't expect from a Porsche. And also, it being an electric car, it has some nice little gimmicky features for you to be able to talk about at parties so people think you're more interesting. One of those is the air conditioning. See, on most cars, actually on every car I've ever seen up until this point, the vents and the direction in which the airflow comes out is manually controlled. You have to use these things called hands. But in this car, it's a little bit different. You do still have to use your hands, but you don't have to touch vents where air comes out of. Ugh. Instead, you go into your screen and you click on air conditioning. And there are these little orbs that represent the direction and flow of each of the vents. It's very interesting. Something else which might not be all that useful to most people, but I find quite handy, has to do with when I'm doing a photo shoot of a car. Because you see, I move the seats around, as you do. And when I move the driver's seat, it's fine. I move it back and forth, down, up, whatever I need to do. But when I need to do the passenger seat, I either have to get out of the car, which is quite difficult at my old age, or I have to lean over, and that is just inconvenient. They've thought of that at Porsche. So again, back into the menus, go into your vehicle, and I can actually adjust the passenger seat from the controls on my driver's seat. I don't know how useful that would be to the average person, but to me, it's quite a useful and thoughtful feature. Other than that, of course, it's not like the base car is missing any of the basic accoutrements that you would get in the Turbo S. You still have Apple CarPlay, dual zone climate control, all of the normal luxury features that you'd look for.
There's also one other major advantage to the base, and that, again, has to do with price.
I looked at the sale listings for every Porsche Taycan base on Porsche Finder within a certain radius of my area, and I did the same thing for the Taycan Turbo S. Looked at a couple of criteria: original MSRP, the current selling price, how many miles were on the cars, and the model year. All of this to determine the depreciation trends for the two trims. And what I found was quite interesting, and I have the results right here on this conveniently placed mobile phone. Starting with the base car. With an average yearly mileage of 8,695 miles, there was a depreciation of around $18,120.29. That was from a pool of 20 cars. Switch over to the Turbo S, the average miles per year dropped to 5,430, but the depreciation went up to $45,184.44. That is an 85% difference between the two trims, and the base cars were driven on average more. But on the subject of driving, let's take it out for a real quick spin and see what's the base car really like on the road. In the world of performance cars, it's not a very popular opinion to say that power isn't everything, but it isn't. I can understand wanting a crazy amount of power in a weekend car, and a Ferrari, and a Lamborghini, what have you. That makes sense to me. But in a daily driver, it's kind of a hard sell to me to say that 400 horsepower simply isn't enough. I'm not being intentionally obtuse. I do know that 750 horsepower is more, and it's nice, and I'm sure it's great to enjoy that on a daily basis, but it's not at no cost. It comes at a $100,000 premium, and that's quite a big pill to swallow. And in your day-to-day driving, how often are you really going to get to enjoy that extra power? Probably not that often. That being the case, I would take that $100,000 that you save by going for the base trim and buy yourself something like a 718 Boxster GTS 4.0. Then you get the best of both worlds. Your Taycan will do all of the work of hugging trees and helping the environment, and then on the weekends, you can jump into your Boxster and enjoy that naturally aspirated flat six. Let's talk about the Taycan base. It's a very comfortable car. I've driven the Turbo S, and on the road, do they feel all that different? Honestly, not really. I'm not gonna notice the difference in materials while I'm driving. I'm only really gonna notice it if I'm looking for it. And for the mass majority of the time, once you've bought the car and you're living with it day to day, you're not really gonna be looking for it. Everything about this car is laid out excellent. It's a Porsche after all, so it's kind of self-explanatory to even bring it up, but the driving position is great. These standard seats are really comfortable. They're very supportive without sacrificing their sporty feel. The throttle response is great. It does have regenerative braking. I don't know how it works on other electric cars, but a nice feature on the Taycan is you can actually turn it off. I've read an article once talking about how people become disoriented. They start to feel sick, the sensations that regenerative braking gives you. In this car, it's very simple. You go into drive, you hit recuperation, and you can turn it off. No problems there, and then the car will brake just like any other. But if you want to have that little extra power, that better efficiency, switch the recuperation on, and as you brake, it'll bring back as much battery power as it possibly can. It's a very nice system. And this is actually a very easy car to drive. It's a very easy car to enjoy. You can sit back, relax, no problems whatsoever, and you're still covered in luxury. It's really hard for me to explain it without repeating myself over and over again. Just because it's a base car, it doesn't mean it's not a Porsche. And Porsches are nice. It's really very quiet in here, which is nice. I'm on a fairly bumpy road, and it's handling the bumps very well, and it's handling the noise quite well. So I don't even have to talk this loud. I could really bring it down almost to a whisper, and you'll probably be able to hear me just fine. I drove on this very same road in my Boxster on the way over here, and I was bouncing around all over the place. In this car, just sort of glides right across, no problems at all. I truly believe in understanding the role of a car when you're buying one, and for me, the Taycan base, it really does the job of the Turbo S for half of the money. Now, I will say I can understand wanting a little bit more, but wanting more really can come in the form of options. You can spend 10 grand on this car, get some really nice options, active cruise control, surround view, get some of the bigger, fancier looking wheels that Porsche has to offer, and you'll still have a great, great car. But that's just my opinion. I want to know your opinion, so let us know in the comments below which trim would you take. Do you agree with me and why? Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. A big thank you to Porsche Ontario for loaning me this car. All of the regular links will be in the description below. Like, subscribe, hit the bell icon so that you don't miss a post. But until the next video, thank you again for watching and take care.